GONK droids are a bit of a meme among Star Wars fans. Most fans are familiar with these odd-looking walking batteries who do little aside from saying GONK and are fun to mess around with in LEGO Star Wars. But while most fans are aware these strange little droids exist, few fans know all that much about them. That's probably because most fans assume that there isn't much to know. However, there's actually a fair bit of lore behind the GONK droid and its cousins, and because we're the obsessive expanded universe fans that we are, we're going to be discussing it in detail today.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The GONK droid, or to use its proper name, the GNK power droid, was pretty much a walking battery. Most of its internal space was devoted to powerful fusion generators, which it used to generate power. The generators allow the droids to be self-sufficient, but their main purpose was to allow the droids to be used as an easy source of power when no others were available. A single GONK droid could charge up a land speeder, though they were mostly used to power smaller pieces of technology, such as blaster cannons, or to recharge anything from blaster power packs to other droids. Let's take a quick minute to think about that last point. While they weren't very smart, GONK droids were equipped with artificial intelligence and, as droids, they were all self-aware to a degree. This meant that they had the ability to contemplate the fact that they existed solely for other droids or random pieces of equipment to just leech off their power supply, which is kind of messed up. I mean, what even is the point of making a portable battery and then giving it legs and sentience? Couldn't you just use the space taken up by a processor for more fusion generators or whatever? Furthermore, since their work didn't require much thinking, we can only conclude that these poor droids spent their time having existential crises about this predicament, and we surely would in their situation as well. Aside from their power cells and existential crisis modules, GONK droids were also very heavily armored. These tough little machines could survive intense radiation, the extremes of heat and cold, and a range of other environmental conditions. This made them particularly useful on desolate planets with harsh environments, where these droids could quite literally be the only thing between a crashed spacer and an early grave. The heavy armoring of GONK droids was a bit of a necessity, of course, as fusion generators weren't the most stable pieces of technology and could explode quite violently if not properly protected. As a final note on the droid's design, GONK droids not only had a pair of legs, but also a single manipulator arm, which was hidden under a panel on the droid's lower front side. The droids rarely used it because sentient batteries generally don't need arms, but hey, they had them just in case. Some GONK droid owners made use of these arms in unorthodox ways. For instance, there's a recorded example of a GONK droid using this manipulator arm to hold a blaster. GONK droids weren't all that impactful in the grand scheme of galactic history, as you can probably imagine. They were first produced in the later years of the Galactic Republic by Industrial Automaton, the company responsible for the wildly popular R-series astromech line. GONK droids' only notable mark in history was their role in an odd religion known as the Cult of the Power Droids, which started to spread shortly after the Battle of Endor. The ideology of the cult is unknown, but it apparently sent out pairs of GONK droids to ask random sentients for money. According to renowned linguist and scholar Ibn Q3 Baobab, the phrase "gonk gonk gonk ko Kenya C" was guaranteed to make these droids frack off, though it was unknown why. The GONK droid did have one huge dark secret that most fans don't know about. It was a knockoff product. You heard that right. Industrial Automaton basically copied the design for these droids from Veril Line Systems' EG6 power droid line and sold them as competitor products. GONK droids were sold at a vastly decreased price too. Veril Line Systems sold brand new EG6 power droids for 2,500 credits each, while GONK droids sold for just 100 credits a pop with virtually identical schematics and features. Talk about undercutting competitors. Most of the GONK droids seen in the galaxy at large were actually EG6 droids, as they were hundreds of years older than Industrial Automaton's knockoff and thus ended up being more widespread. To make matters even more confusing, telling the two power droids apart was a difficult task since they looked pretty much identical. The only real way to differentiate GONK droids from EG6s was that GONK droids spoke Gonkian binary, the distinctive droid language that gave them their nickname, while EG6s didn't have vocabulators. From what we can gather, the EG6 did have a big selling point over the similar GONK droid despite its vastly inflated price. Heavily modified EG6s were quite common, while modified GONK droids were not, meaning it's probable that EG6 was a more resilient model that was also better suited to modification. After all, Industrial Automaton must have cut corners somewhere with the GONK droid if they were able to sell it at such an astoundingly low price. Before we move on from the EG6, we should quickly note that Veril Line Systems responded to the rollout of the GONK droid with an entirely new power droid design, the S9 series Heavy Power Droid. These droids were larger, more expensive, and much more powerful than both EG6 and the GONK droid, capable of powering starfighters and other large pieces of equipment. Ironically, it was also based on a design that Veril Line Systems ripped off from the Cybot Galactica's Treadwell droid model, adding a touch of irony to their earlier conflict with Industrial Automaton. The GONK droid, EG6 and S9 weren't the only power droids on the market, as you might imagine. You might remember a droid similar to the GONK in the employ of the Grand Army of the Republic in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. They can be seen in countless scenes in Republic hangar bays, especially aboard Star Destroyers, and they played a prominent role in the attack on the Rishi Moon, during which Rex Cody 5's Echo and Heavy used several of them to blow up the Rishi station. Allow us to introduce the GONK droid's cousin, the PLNK droid. Officially known as the PLNK-series power droid, PLNK droids were made by Industrial Automaton, which means they were indeed cousins of the GONK droid and not the Veril Line Systems models. While they may have been originally designed exclusively for Republic use, they also appeared in civilian starports and even aboard Separatist vessels, meaning they were probably just as widespread as their cousins. From the outside, they looked like two GONK droids welded together with elongated bodies and 4 legs. Inside, however, they were quite different. PLNK droids didn't feature the internal fusion generators that most other power droids were built around. Instead, they contained large tanks of liquid Tabana. Liquid Tabana was a highly explosive alternative to the more common power sources often used for heating in remote military installations. It was also the exclusive power source of the Republic's BTL-B Y-wing bombers, which is why PLNK droids were so popular with the Republic Navy. PLNK droids themselves ran on liquid Tabana, and like GONK droids, they made use of their own liquid Tabana supplies to keep themselves running. However, unlike the fusion generators of GONK droids, PLNK droids had a limited Tabana supply and needed to be refilled on occasion. As we all surely remember from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, PLNK droids were also useful as bombs. There's no end to the anti-droid cruelty of the Galactic Republic, it seems, as clones in desperate situations occasionally used PLNK droids to blow up approaching armies. As was seen in the case of the Rishi station, this was usually done to prevent the Separatists from capturing crucial objectives, a last-minute scorched earth tactic. It should be noted that, as far as we know, the PLNK droids themselves were never asked whether they consented to being strapped up with bombs and blown up to keep the Seps away from some military base or other. But such was the life of a droid. So that's our look at the GONK droid, and at a variety of other power droid models as well. But what do you think? Are there other Star Wars memes that you'd like us to spend 10 minutes over explaining? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.